Welcome to X-Men Evolution Episode 41 of Cyclops is Waiting For Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast. I'm Rod, and I'm trying out a teleprompter. We'll see if that makes it smoother or more complicated.
And I'm JC, and now we get tons of little status updates on our screen that we didn't get in our old podcast recording setup now that we've added video, which you could see on YouTube, so you should do that. And then just a quick reminder, Rod and I will be at LA Comic-Con, both on panels, especially on Saturday, and you should come check us out. Use the promo code Cyclops for 12% off of your ticket price. Now, let's get into our regular rigmarole. Cyclops is Waiting For Me is our weekly podcast series. We are going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode we can find. The podcast started with the original 1992 X-Men The Animated Series, which was building up to the release of X-Men 97. And along the way, we launched our companion show called the Xavier Files with interviews from members of the cast. Since season 2 for X-Men 97 is a ways off at the moment, we are back for our second half of our first watch through. I could say words of X-Men Evolution. Rod, save it.
Yeah. And some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that started over 20 years ago. There will be spoilers. If you don't want spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. Especially, this is a pair, so watch both of them.
It'd be weird not to.
Yeah, we're currently not sponsored by or affiliated with Marvel Animation, Disney, or Disney Plus in any way.
And don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Threads, and Facebook. And of course, make sure you are following us on any and all of your favorite podcast services.
Now into the show. Today we're going to be Today we're going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 11, titled Dark Horizon Part 1. It aired on August 9th, 2003, and currently sits at a 7.8 star rating on IMDb.
And let's address the elephant in the room with regard to the airing of episodes. So, in 2 episodes from now, we will cover Cruise Control. Cruise Control aired as the finale of the season, but was meant to be before the Weapon X episode, the X-23 episode that we had with John Reisinger.
That makes so much more sense.
Contextually, that should have happened, but because we're literally going off of airing order, and then literally Disney Plus has it in the airing order. So yeah, that's why it's the wrong scenario. So.
Yeah, because I was like, because we watched Cruise Control ways back, and then watched these, and I was like, okay. So it felt like one of those episodes that they used to do this in like the late 80s, early 90s, where they would have an episode that they could just like fill in for emergency spots, not for the show itself, but for like the network, you know?
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, it had next to no context as to what was happening. Even in this, coming out of this, there's a mention of, Rogue decided to stay behind, but it didn't matter for which reason she was staying behind, so it still actually works.
Yeah, because you remember when, maybe TV's still like this, I haven't watched it in a while, but like, like a sports game would like end half an hour early or something, and it feels like the network would be like, throw this episode of something on TV right now.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to go with the other way, which is what I was used to from Saturday morning cartoons of like, I would be excited for my show to come on, have not looked at like TV Guide to see what like shows were coming, and then it gets preempted by a sports game, like especially in the Northeast, like football or college football and stuff like that. And it was like, I don't get to watch my show because the shitty college is on TV right now.
That did happen a lot, like that, or like golf sometimes. Like, it was like really random.
I feel like I didn't get a lot of golf preempting my stuff when I was, Saturday morning cartoons, but maybe where you are from, that was a different scenario, Rod.
Maybe that was more like a Sunday afternoon thing. Like I was like turning on a station I knew that had cartoons, and instead it was like golf.
Yeah.
I just knew there was a lot more golf than I ever cared for.
USA would do that, I feel like. But we are not here to talk about golf or Sunday morning cartoons. We are here to talk about a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, this one, I've just gotten used to watching the previously ons now, because you never know when this episode is going to start. Like,
and there's also on these no skip option. Like even recently watching rebuilding the universe with it's the Lego Star Wars stuff.
Oh, okay.
Like there's literally the skip recap of the episode that I watched 3 seconds ago.
Yeah, right.
But it literally skips to the end of the recap perfectly. Here, because it flows so perfectly into it, like, you actually shouldn't skip them.
Yeah. So this one basically shows a few episodes back with Mesmero getting like all the stuff for Apocalypse, and then shows flashbacks like Rogue having the thing where she absorbed so many people that it was like coming out in different ways, which is
and
also
taking over her whole personality too.
Yeah, and I guess it's also kind of a hint that like Xavier was not successful in exorcising those demons.
It also feels like it makes the whole episode moot because of what happens in this episode. Like, they basically undid the thing that Xavier did super quickly. It wasn't even like a season later. It was just like, and now she's getting everybody's shit back again.
Right.
Like, shy of Juggernaut, she got everybody plus more.
That's right, yeah. And no one was the wiser for a while. But it does segue back into the mansion at nighttime. You see the outline of who you think is Rogue. It looked like they might have been trying to keep it a little mysterious for like half a second, but then you see the hair later.
And almost in the same way of the previous episode with X-23, where they do the shadow as they're opening the door. Mm-hmm. It's so obviously her silhouette, it's not even close.
Yeah. And to the writer's credits, they did kind of do this like attack, I guess, whatever, in order, like a correct order. So like Rogue goes and absorbs Xavier first, then Jean. And then I think Scott, because of what we hear from Kitty.
I hope that it's her attacking Scott and that's all that's happening.
Yeah, that's another thing. The noises, it sounded like other things going on.
And also, that means those walls are pretty thin.
That tracks. They just rebuilt it, right? That'd be quick.
It's made out of cardboard, basically. Yeah.
And you think that Kitty's going to get away because she wakes up and then she hides behind the door when Rogue comes in, and then she phases through the wall, but it takes like 5 seconds for Rogue to catch up to Kitty, absorb her powers, and then...
Because she actually does get to Scott's room.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, she gets to Scott's room and realizes he's passed out, and she's like, well, this is not good. And then Rogue gets her, and then it cuts to the intro, which I did watch this time. It was different, but like, once again, like, it's whatever.
I think it's funny because, especially, we got spoiled with X-Men 97, that they were adjusting the intro from a character basis like 4 different times, let alone the scenes that were references to like stuff you might need to know. But like, the second Storm is not on the team. The second Storm switches her outfit when Nightcrawler's on the team. All that stuff is compensated for in that intro. Here, it's like, well, we haven't talked about Spike in 5 episodes, and he's still listed as a part of the team.
It's too expensive to change it now.
And they haven't even addressed it.
That's right. Because he just goes off with the Morlocks, and Storm hasn't really mentioned him at all or being worried about
nobody
him. Nobody
has. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I didn't either, so I guess that...
But the irony is that it's after they actually did a change to the intro.
Yeah, right?
Like, if there was a time that if he was going to disappear for an extended period of time and you were going to switch it, this would have been when you did it, and they decided not to.
And I guess minor spoiler, he doesn't come back for the rest of the season, so...
Correct.
Like, okay. But then when it comes back from that animated intro, Kitty's alarm goes off. It's at 8:34. I don't usually take specific notes like that, but that was a little specific. To me, it signaled that Kitty's the weird girl, because, like, you know, I feel, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like most of us, you know, for school and stuff, we set an alarm for like 7 or 8 or, you know, even number or whatever, 7:30, and maybe snooze until then or whatever. But there'd always be that one weird kid to be like, I set my alarm for 7:53 a.m.
Do you know why why we do it?
Oh, you do that?
It's because snooze is 9 minutes usually. So you usually set it that it ends, like, because I'm that person that when I set an alarm, I hit it 3 times. Like, that's how long it takes me to get it. So I will do it on like 9:03 to be up and out of bed by 9:30 kind of scenario.
It took me like more time than I'd like to admit to realize that the snoozes weren't an even 10 minutes. And then like I found out later there was some, I can't remember the reasoning behind it, but like it made sense. It's like pretty standard across the board. In my defense, though, like my dad, somebody who'd survived the Korean War and stuff, was a pretty like militant about our schedules and stuff. So he was like, in the mornings, you just get up. Yes, it's gonna suck. Yes, it's gonna hurt, but you're not gonna do it otherwise. And then like when I got out of school and was on my own, yeah, I'd be one of those guys. I'd like hit the alarm for like an hour or hit the snooze for like an hour.
So in the 50s, it was because of technical limitations of mechanical gears in clocks.
Oh, I thought it was something about human behavior. Okay, well that makes more sense then.
That's the second reason, but the original is the 9-minute limitation because of the 10-minute loop, basically.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll learn something today. Anyway, Kitty wakes up with what looks like a hangover. I mean, we know what happened. She thinks that she just had a bad night's sleep and a bad nightmare. I don't know if I ever remember having such a bad nightmare that I wake up tired. I just wake up tired because I'm old now. So like that must be
no. I've had those where it was like you have a dream that is so exhausting that you feel more tired than you went to bed with. I've definitely experienced that.
Yeah,
and then it's one of those where you also like you woke up 3 times in the middle of the night because of it, and when that happens, you're less likely to remember the actual dream itself, other than it sucked.
Oh yeah, no, I've had those before. We have like glimpses of stuff that did happen, but you can't put the memory together to something right. That also happens a lot now because I have a cat who, 3 a.m. is their Olympic time, so I'll vaguely remember like, was somebody knocking on the window or something? And I was like, that must have been, maybe somebody was, but that must have been like her like batting at a bird or something or whatever,
right.
And but my mind filled in something else like more creative.
Yeah.
But Kitty's freaking out because apparently it's the last day of school, and she goes and wakes up. I think it was a Scott.
Kurt.
It was Kurt, that's right. And it's like, we're gonna be late for last day of school, and then everybody kind of, you hear the commotion of everyone being upset about like missing the last day of school, but then they still make breakfast. Their school must start at like 9:30 a.m. or something.
If they could be waking up at 8:30 and still get there on time, it has to be 9:30 or something like that, because they're not like down the street from it either, right? Know?
Which is wild because I don't know what time school started for you. I feel like I had to be at school like at 8, sometimes a little earlier or something.
I want to say we started at 8:30, so we had to be like we'd start getting drop off at 8 o'clock because parents don't want to deal with like getting caught in traffic and that making you late and shit. So yeah, because
I just remember waking up with the 7 in my alarm, so like at the beginning. So I forget if it was like I woke up at 7 or 7:30 or something like that. And it was anyway. Yes, for them to wake up like after 8:30 and still team together to make breakfast, especially that chaotically.
Yeah, and they're all doing it like in a coordinated fashion. I want to say Sunspot literally ripped the top of a milk carton off, or an orange juice carton. And they all kind of know their jobs. Like Amara is using her fire powers to cook the eggs. Bobby, out of his bare hands, which feels gross, is making ice cubes that's going into everybody's drinks.
Yeah, everybody's got a little piece of Bobby in them.
Oh, God. But there is also a quick shot with Rogue, who's like getting out of the shower. The original shot, she was like, it's because she's like wrapped in the towel. It was shot from here up, so I was like, are they showing naked Rogue right now for a half second?
Maybe
they were not, because they showed the pan out with it.
Gotcha.
But then she's like, that was a weird dream. Maybe I should go to therapy.
What a progressive thing to say in the early 2000s.
Yeah. That the goth girl needs to go to therapy.
Yeah, and she self-acknowledged it, and they didn't present it as like a weakness necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just something that was a little strange, or the circumstances were a little strange. And then the kids do get to school, presumably on time. They don't acknowledge that they're late or anything.
It's the last day. Who gives a shit?
Right. And the kids all run in, but Rogue lays back, and you see a limo pull up. The door opens, and she just gets in. So, like, just through context clues, we're like, clearly she's being mind controlled by Mesmero.
And totally silent and stuff like that. It's interesting because she was doing, like, the back and forth which I don't think we saw in the previous Mesmero possession, where they were coming in and out of control. Whereas here, she was herself this morning when she was getting out of the shower. And then she decided, then she got close and then got pulled back in scenario. So,
yeah. And inside, Jean and Scott are talking about their last day of school. If we didn't figure it out before, we get confirmed now that they are seniors and they'll be graduating in, which is crazy, the day after. I don't know if that was common. We didn't have
we had at least a week between.
Yeah.
Or because we would end classes, and then there would be the week of finals, and then there'd be the week in between to make sure you didn't fuck up your finals, and then you would go and graduate.
Yeah, I think I have to look back and see what mine was like, but I remember the week of finals, and I remember there being at least the remainder of a week or something until the weekend, like a Sunday when wasn't graduations always on Sundays too?
I went to Catholic schools and Jesuit schools, so stuff was Sundays. So I don't know if public school is different.
I think our graduation was on Sunday too, because I remember the local churches having services in the morning or something.
Pop culture counter to that. Can't Hardly Wait. They have their graduation, I think it's on a Friday, because the big party that happens in that movie is on the Saturday night.
That's just for myself, look that up later to see when I graduate. I'm pretty sure it was a Sunday. But anyway, if it was a Sunday thing, that'd be wild. Be like, we're at school on a Saturday, but it could be anything. It doesn't matter.
I guess maybe they graduated on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's still just crazy that it's today's our last day of school and tomorrow is the walking graduation ceremony.
Oh, and to your point, we did know that at least Scott and Jean were 18, which implies being seniors because of the kiddie driver's ed
driving
stuff.
Thing. Mm-hmm. And I guess they're the only two, right?
Yeah, they're the oldest ones of the group.
And then Principal Kelly stops them and kind of makes some racist remarks, basically. And
just straight up.
To their credit, though, this seems like if it was going to happen in any time period, this is the right time period. Because I remember specifically, now this was late 90s for me, or mid to late 90s for me. I remember being in middle school, and our home ec teacher, who was usually pretty well-meaning and stuff, telling one of the girls in our class to her face in front of the rest of the class that she looked prettier with makeup on. And even then, I was like, what a wild thing for an adult teacher to tell a teenage girl. and then, everyone realized, and then she apologized. But I was like, I can't see that happening now without someone being immediately fired and becoming front page news. But in the 90s, not okay, but probably still happened. So I guess Principal Kelly says that. I also had a note here. Did I just forget? Did the real Principal Kelly come back?
No, this has been the same dude the entire time.
Who did I think?
It was because remember you're thinking Mystique was Principal Darkholme. Yeah.
Oh, it was the other principal.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I got mistake. I forgot there was a different principal the first season.
Yes.
And then Principal Kelly, we're just is it going to be a Senator Kelly?
Or
stand-in?
There was he was able to withstand the mind control thing that. So there was he was implied to have powers, but I guess that was one of those dangling plot lines between the season 2 writers, and we know people like Stephen E. Gordon had left the show, so maybe that was one of those we don't give a shit. Somebody who stayed on the show didn't bother with it kind of scenario.
Actually, Stephen leaving before this season makes a lot of sense for a lot of the questions I had. And then so anyway, Jean and Scott just kind of deal with it, I guess. They were sure, we'll be out of here tomorrow anyway, and we're also happy about that. Actually, so the main thing Principal Kelly wanted to tell them was don't cause any trouble at the graduation because we know you people
and these kids deserve better.
Yeah, I was like, okay. Anyway.
Yeah. It was very much a you people's conversation, no doubt.
And then we go over to the Brotherhood house.
Who are just not going to the last day of school.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
They're kind of doing their equivalent of chores, I guess. Throwing shit out the windows and things.
Yeah.
Then we see Rogue kind of sneaks up to the house, which is not very hard. Which is funny because for being the villains, they don't have a very secure premises.
They're not the smart villains, though. So. Yeah.
And she knocks on the door. Wanda answers it, but no one's at the door. We find out this because Rogue is like levitated above the door after I don't know what happened there exactly. Did she? I'm guessing she teleported in and then levitated.
But then she's also has Kitty's phasing power. Like she's like
could have been anything.
She's like totally doing. We've discussed this character in the past, and you've only seen him in the Age of Apocalypse reference episode of 92, Mimic, who just literally could spout out multiple power combinations at once.
There you go. So
yeah.
But she's revealed to be levitating over Wanda inside the door and, absorbs her powers, which I want to know how that went. Like, that sounds wild,
This version of Wanda is not like our MCU version where it's more daddy vendetta than crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's just mostly that, like, the powers we saw from Wanda, even in, like, the mall fight, and Rogue had hung on this time long enough to knock Wanda out. Like, I guess the whole thing is since she's under Mesmero's control, like, evil means you have more control. Because we saw that with Spike, too, right? Like, in the other mutants before.
Yeah, there's also the scenario where if you're doing a thing and it hurts you, Mesmero doesn't care if it hurts you, so it's like you have to keep holding on.
Yeah. So Wanda gets knocked out, and then Blob is watching the Powerpuff Girls.
The not Powerpuff Girls.
It was weird because I don't know the monkey's name.
Mojo Jojo.
But he was like exactly the same.
He was taller and skinnier, but yeah, it was the least subtle parody they could have done.
Yeah, because then the girls themselves, the three girls, they were clearly like a little bit different and stuff, but like what a weird little thing, because it never comes back to it. It's just the thing he's watching. And even the way it's like presented, it takes a second for me at least to realize that it was something he was watching on TV. I was like, why did they just cut because it wasn't like it wasn't like a wide shot of a TV having it on. It was just like full screen. But then Rogue, cleans house, literally, like absorbs Lance, Blob, Toad, and then Quicksilver takes a second.
I love Toad though, because Toad starts to like get away and he's like hopping around, and she's using this like weird combination of teleports, and then finally when he realizes he's fucked, he's like, oh, this is the part I don't like.
Yeah.
It had a little bit of like that anime trope of like the Dami Mommy scenario where he's like pinned against a wall and he's like, this is gonna suck, but he's still gonna like it a little bit.
Yeah, it's like Futurama, like snoo snoo.
Yeah,
the spirit is willing, but the flesh is spongy and weak.
Yeah, and then Quicksilver comes down from upstairs, and then Rogue does the obvious of like, oh well, if I lift him just above the ground telekinetically, he can't run anywhere, no matter how fast he's moving, and then she snags him. Yeah,
and then big reveal that Mystique was the one in the limo. And she comes out and gets Rogue. Back at the mansion, Storm is standing by the window, and it's raining outside. It's in the evening time, and I guess maybe the kids were worried that the rain would ruin their graduation. We catch Storm like reassuring Jean that she won't let the rain ruin the graduation the next day.
Right, because Jean is concerned that the weather might not be perfect for her parents who are coming to visit.
Yeah, which this is my argument to anything outdoors that's not like in California or something.
Don't plan on being outdoors.
Yeah, you just got to be okay with it raining, whatever you're doing. Like, this is coming from a guy who used to work in like sound and events in the East Coast. It's like if you put a bunch of rich people in a space, you have to have like a tent contingency plan because it's probably going to rain. There's like literally a 50-50 chance anywhere but like LA.
Yeah, seriously.
And see, Rogue walks by the outside window. I guess time is supposed to have passed, like where
that was weird.
And then dropped her off back home, and then Rogue was
and then picks her up again. Yeah,
because I was like, okay, so I don't, because then Mystique picks her back up. That's why I was confused by my notes. I was like, oh, that's right, this was a weird thing that happened.
Yeah.
But
no, you nailed it. It was weird that they bothered showing her back home just for her to be back in the limo with Mystique, and then gives like the one-word response of window.
Yeah. And then they drive off to like a warehouse, and Mystique has Rogue like touch her to absorb her powers. And
because now she has to turn into an owl.
yeah, which is like, I think I had just come to grips with Mystique turning into random animals that are like nowhere near the shape or biology of like anything humanoid, and now we have Rogue, like, and that I don't want to be the guy that thinks too much about things, especially about a show that is already like an extra suspension of disbelief from the property we already know. Like these are all high school kids, but like, what kind of psychological damage does that do to Rogue? She's already absorbed like everybody in her space, and now she has like fucking like owl thoughts and things.
I don't think she gets owl thoughts. She didn't absorb an owl, Rod.
She became an owl.
Yeah, but she knows she's doing... Okay. Yeah. It's not like she ate a fucking mouse.
That we saw. That'd be funny as that was like the beginning of the next season. Like,
is her coughing up owl pellets?
Yeah, and then she just realizes she kind of likes it or something. And her and Toad go, I don't know. So yeah, she turns into an owl, sneaks into the warehouse. We see that this is Magneto's updated compound, I guess.
Yeah, which is obviously closer because it's not in the middle of the ski resort mountains.
Yeah. Colossus is carrying a bunch of pallets of whatever Magneto's smuggling.
He just moves shit. That's his job.
Yeah. And Rogue absorbs his powers pretty easily because he's not looking. She gets attacked by Sabretooth, but he is not careful whatsoever, and she quickly absorbs his powers.
I do love the thing where he's like literally going in for like a slash, and basically she catches it with the metal fist. And I love the hybridization of her powers. Like there's something cool when it's like she's combining multiple things at once to make shit happen.
Yeah, somehow this did those multiple powers better than Secret Invasion.
The less we talk about Secret Invasion, the better our lives are.
Right, there you go.
All that said, when we recorded this, Rod and I were texting the night before because we did both watch the first episodes of Agatha. And as of where those first 2 episodes are, we recommend people watch it.
I liked it.
If you're like me, the first half of the first episode may irk you, and at the 50% mark, it absolutely redeemed itself. So that's all I'm going to say.
It's like you said, purposely rough. Although I'll say the same thing that I said to one of my friends who messaged me if it was a good show. I said I like it. If you liked WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness and want to know what happened to Wanda and Agatha, then there's a good, healthy chance you'll probably like Agatha so far. Then my friend said I didn't like either of those things. I was like, then why?
So she absorbs Sabretooth. Pyro arrives. Pyro tries to murder her because he just makes a giant wall of flame, and then she walks through it like a badass.
Yeah, okay, she did completely like metallicized.
Yeah, she did full metal. So, and then we get the square off between her and Gambit, which I love because even though this version of Gambit hasn't gotten a ton of exposure to Rogue, he also knows a lot of what's going on. Like, he's actually very clever as the thief, which I thought was really cool. And he's like, oh, you're not alone in this. Probably with Mystique. But what's Mystique's game in all this? And then she actually kissed him to drain his power. And I thought that was fantastic use of that character.
Yeah, it was a nice little nod to what the history you normally know between those two. My note here was like, they have this like hybrid like fight and flirt. I mean, it ended with the kiss, obviously.
Well, in this one, she's not doing the flirting because it's the mind controlled version.
Yeah, no, he is.
He's doing the flirt. Whereas, like, we know, like, in the comics in 92 and 97, the flirting is usually mutual. So it's really funny seeing it be one-sided and stoic as hell, but she's also the quote-unquote more bad one in this scenario. So
yeah, that's why I took it as like it made sense for her to kiss him because she kind of recognized that was the vulnerability. Like he's kind of being a little flirty, and then she's like, okay, well, here, this is what you want. Magneto arrives, sees everyone taken out, and he's smart too. He's like, Rogue, where are you?
I also love that he is at this point. It's insinuated that he has let Mastermind go because she doesn't even need to absorb him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Now, here's something I went back and watched, and I don't know if I just missed it or if I was supposed to gather something. He he recognizes that Gambit is Rogue like a split second before. Did he notice something that I didn't notice right before that, or he just got the wrong vibe?
He saw multiple people passed out, so that's how he knew it was Rogue.
Oh, and the Gambit just happened to be the last one?
Yes.
Okay, so it was just framing. I thought he saw something on Gambit, or he saw Gambit twice or something, and then...
No, I think it was just who is a strong enough powerhouse to take out all of these people.
Gotcha. And she unmorphs and absorbs Magneto's powers too, which is hilariously unceremonious for how much of a villain he was set up to be for the last couple seasons.
Mm-hmm. Especially since this is like the super powered version of him too.
Oh, that's right.
After they did the Captain America stuff and everything.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not old man Magneto. This is like closer to his prime Magneto.
Yeah.
So.
And then at the graduation, I gotta be honest, this is the first time in I guess a couple seasons, almost 2 seasons now, that I've had that high school like nostalgia thing come back since the first season. Because when we watched the first season, anybody that was with us then, like, remember, we were like, oh, this was how it was like in high school. Everything was like high school memories. It was like 90% high school memories and 10% X-Men stuff.
Yeah, it was trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so we're seeing the graduation here, and I was like, oh man, yeah, that it is kind of like, because they had this pan over the crowd of the kids in their caps and gowns, and they're all like hugging and talking and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that is like a weird thing, and this happened to me both in high school and college, when you realize I'm never going to see these people again. Mm-hmm. But you're also like celebrating, so I wasn't sad. I don't think anybody was really sad. I even remember my college graduation when you really know you're not going to see people again, and like taking pictures with people and stuff. And like, what a weird thing that's just normal. Like, you spend like 4 years of your life with like a lot of people, especially in college, like in living situations. We saw all of us saw each other in compromising situations for years, and then trauma bonded through like schooling and stuff. And then one day we all like walk through a hallway, receive a piece of paper, and then wave goodbye after taking photos, and then we don't talk for like 30 years.
Yep. And then you see them post something problematic on Facebook, and you're like, unfollow. What I thought was interesting is Jean's family arrives, and Scott is like, no, go be with them. So she doesn't even introduce this guy who's like presumably her boyfriend to her parents. Like, maybe I guess they'd met him in the past, but that'd still be weird then to not like say hi to them and stuff. I don't know. It was a weird choice for her to not be like, no, come say hi to my dad,
I think I actually caught Scott saying something like, who's that? So I got the feeling that he had never met them before. Which is like, I just have to keep reminding myself, like, this is a different universe of X-Men, and they're not even really dating yet, even if you put Cruise Control before this. They don't help us with the timeline of the relationship at all.
I like how Storm just literally takes credit for the weather.
Right, and it's like one of those things where you don't know.
Yeah, like, did you actually do anything, or are you just taking credit because it was going to be a nice day?
Yeah.
But also, if you are, a little bit of an abuse of power.
Right. It'd be funny is if like Deadpool was there, he'd be like, well, let's find out, and just like knocks her out. And if the weather gets shitty again, we're like, oh, okay, well, she was doing a good job.
Deadpool knocking out Storm would just be like the worst retribution ever for him after that. Like, she would fry him like he's Toad in X-Men.
Yeah. So then during the actual graduation ceremony, which so for me specifically, this graduation ceremony seemed really relatable because I came from a small high school. So they showed maybe about like 100 or less students out there in those chairs, and that's about how my graduating class was.
Yeah, mine was only about 150, so not too dissimilar.
Now, we were in Indiana, and we're in dumbasses, so instead of being out on a football field wondering if it was going to rain, we were inside the gym.
We did football. Yeah.
And
did we do gym? We did the gym. You're right.
Is nothing wrong about having it outside, but worrying about rain is, it's a legitimate, concern because most graduations are between spring and summer. Like, yeah, there's a good chance it could rain.
And then Kelly gives like I mean, there's no other way to say it. He gives basically a MAGA speech at that point, not even subtle shit.
Yeah. My note was Kelly gives a racist speech. Yeah, what did he say? You'll have to persevere, even though some students will have more advantages over you than others. And it's like, okay,
yeah, he's just like sowing those seeds right there.
And then
we do get a quick shot of Scott and Jean holding hands next to each other, though.
So they're like at least trying for a relationship, but we have no indication that they've actually had that talk yet.
I am convinced they have not had the talk yet.
Yeah.
If after the multiple episodes that we thought they had the talk and they still didn't, they have not had the talk. So
and if we do put cruise control after this, they still haven't had the talk, definitely.
Right.
Anyway, Kelly's speech is just in time for the Brotherhood to arrive.
With the acolytes. It's all of them together.
Which we kind of got a hint of, because when they were doing the pan over of the graduating class, we saw Quicksilver walking away from the kids and stuff. So I didn't think about that until later. Because I remember there being odd things like, where was he going? It's like, because he was going with the bad guys, I guess.
Right. Well, because at this point we know that he is in charge of the Brotherhood because he's reporting up to his dad. Remember when Gambit came back and put him in charge of the group? So
yeah. And Kelly looks up and she's like, "Oh, great! See, just what I told you." It's like, well,
yeah.
You're wrong and you're right in that, like, you were right that something kind of was going to happen, but you addressed the wrong kids about it. But and they chase all the civilians away except for Kelly. I guess he's just not afraid. Well, to your point, like maybe he has some sort of power. Or dumb.
I guess, but he also doesn't like. I hope we get, even if we know the series ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger, I want there to be some resolution for Kelly. That's what I want. So.
He dies. And
his head blows up.
Yeah. Then Magneto clarifies they're there because they want to deal with Rogue because she took out everybody. And not only are there witnesses, the actual victims are there.
Yeah. I love the defense on Rogue is she just gets put in the middle of a bunch of metal folding chairs that are swirling around her.
That took me a second to realize what was happening. Because I was like, is that her? Is that, Magneto? Because then there was that flash of Mesmero. And I'm like, I'm losing track of who's where. And what's happening. But once she breaks free of the metal chairs, which surprisingly wasn't like the most bulletproof defense,
it was not really strong, especially if of all the power sets that she absorbed, she's just kind of able to like use his magnetism to get rid of it and then fly off, and everybody's just standing there with like their dick in their hand, like oh fuck. And
that's Magneto clarifies like, yeah, this is what happened with her, and then the Brotherhood.
I do like, we see yet again though real quick when like the chaos is breaking out and they're surrounding her with chairs, Kitty dodges multiple chairs and then gets hit with a chair because she literally will like dodge two things or run through two walls, but then turns off her phasing at the wrong time every fucking time.
She ran out of that stamina meter for the power.
Yeah, it's a video game. It's the jetpack that I'm using right now in Fortnite to stay in the air as War Machine.
That is a good point. I forgot to write this down because it has mostly to do with the second part of this, the next episode, but it starts kind of here. This all seems like it was written as a video game script. Like everything's like a level up and then team split, and then there's like these little like directives, and stuff. So especially
like quick time event type shit.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And then here I say kind of started, it was like when she had the chair circling her, it's like, okay, now spam your A button until you can like fly out. But then the Brotherhood and X-Men have this realization that they will have to put their differences aside and work together. And of course, the first two who disagree with that are Wolverine and Sabretooth. Because they can't just fucking get it over with.
Right. Well, because it was like Wolverine was going to go by himself, and Magneto's like, no, I don't want anybody going by themselves. So you two go with them. Looks at Gambit and Sabretooth. And I know Gambit's inner monologue is just looking at Sabretooth and Wolverine and be like, they're going to fuck or they're going to fight, and I don't want to deal with either.
Right. And
he's not wrong.
almost happened.
I love, so the next shot is them on their motorcycles, like following the scent for Rogue, and they all have 3 very different helmets. Like Wolverine has like the bucket helmet, Sabretooth has like this like kind of cool, like, I don't know, like biker boy style helmet, but it's up, so it doesn't really stop anything. And Gambit is just like, what the fuck, man? Like, he's so not happy about being in this group.
Yeah, he's the chaperone of the group, and he's like probably the youngest, because we don't know how old Sabretooth is, but we're still assuming he's about the same age as Wolverine, right?
Well, I would imagine he's got to be like, Gambit in specifics, like no older than 19 is my guess. Like I think he's like 18 or 19, because I don't think even in 2003 they would have done the Rogue and Gambit kiss if she's roughly 17, if he wasn't very close in age.
That is like a really... Somebody's going to do a study of media at that point to see when that flip happened with the age appropriateness.
Oh, yeah, like when somebody's cool with like the 15-21 relationship and like all that shit that wouldn't fly now, yeah.
Remember that show, Step by Step?
Of course.
I didn't notice...
Cody.
Yeah, Cody, like, because the...
Cody was a problem.
Well, the girl that was his girlfriend, she's on a podcast now about the show. And she was like, yeah, no one asked about how old Cody was. He could live on his own in a van, but he's dating a high schooler.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because it's the 2 of the sisters have a podcast together.
Oh, is that right? Who it is? Okay.
I think one was Suzanne Summers' daughter, and then the other one was Patrick Duffy's daughter. Okay. And they were like, they're on the podcast together. I think I've seen that too, yeah.
Because I'll be honest, 90% of my podcast consumption is through clips on TikTok or Reels. So that's where I saw it.
Oh yeah, that's where I saw that. I saw that too. Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, and then so they're going after Rogue, Mystique, and Mesmero. And
right, but they don't know Mesmero at the time still.
Yeah. They're just going after Rogue, basically. And then we see that the rest of the team is going to try to figure out what's happening with Apocalypse.
I love, they straight up just have them at the mansion. Like, literally, they let Magneto into, like, the computer room and everything. Like, he's getting free reign right now.
Yeah. So. And Beast is on the computer that is not Cerebro. I went back and checked that.
Right, it's just a computer.
Yeah. It's a giant wall computer thing. Looking for Apocalypse. Xavier reveals, like, oh wait, that's a little bit later.
Sorry, there's the real quick. Yeah. They say that they need to put mental blocks in to help defend against Mesmero's power, because
I missed that. That makes sense.
Xavier knows what it's like when people are doing the possession and stuff like that. Sorry, I was wrong. They do actually know it's Mesmero at that point. They don't know Mystique is there. That's the piece they don't know.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Beast is looking through a bunch of ancient Egyptian stuff, can't find anything, and then Magneto's like, well, don't use Apocalypse, use his given name, and Sabanur. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and it's when they say it's means the first one.
Yeah, so we get Wolverine and Sabretooth really quick, trashing a car. They're both sniffing, smelling and stuff like that. They're ready to fight.
Fight.
And Gambit's like, yeah, Gambit's playing Peacemaker. And then we get the history dump on Apocalypse. So how much of this did you start to know about Apocalypse? Like, what did you know any of that stuff from any of your non-comic fandom?
I think I knew of the story in the broadest terms. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't know Ramatut had anything to do with it.
Yep.
I just kind of assumed that this might be in the evolution version of this. I didn't know that, like, they implied that Ramatut was either a time traveler or an alien. Mm-hmm. They didn't necessarily connect why Apocalypse was left as a baby in the desert. They just said it happened at the same time.
Right. So he was left in the desert because he was a mutant, and then Baal, who is the head of this tribe that found him, that stuff is accurate to the comics, including Ramatut.
Gotcha. Okay.
And cool. If you've ever dove a little deeper into MCU stuff, Ramatut is a version of Kang.
Oh, that's right. I did see that back a couple years ago when we were going to get the Kang stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think he makes a cameo, like a visual cameo on Moon Knight, I think, right?
I don't remember on that part, to be totally honest.
One of somebody in Egypt on the back of their jacket had a Ramatut thing. I think that was an Easter egg. And
I missed that one.
But I think it was like, we're probably not going to go back to that jacket now.
Yeah. But for the most part, all of the Ramatut stuff was accurate to the comics. So
I think that's part of why this pair of episodes was probably some of my favorite from Evolution, because it felt like a superhero show finally.
Yep. I also might have jumped ahead on that part, but it's fine. Yeah. Yeah, they mentioned that it was 5,000 years ago. He appeared in Giza. And then Xavier uses Cerebro to amplify the memories from Mesmero's mind, and he knows that it is inside of the Sphinx. So,
yeah, which is funny. We'll see in a little bit. Like, it wasn't quite accurate. Mm-hmm. So even with Cerebro's help, like Xavier could only get so far. We see the team that was going after Apocalypse arrive in Egypt. It implies that there was a realistic travel time because Xavier had fallen asleep in the jet.
Well, you did jump ahead on one little part. You get the air traffic control that Gambit, Sabretooth, and Wolverine go into. Mm-hmm. They start fighting, and they have tracked a stolen jet that's already over California and about to cross the Pacific. I'm pretty sure the radar doesn't work like that. That if you're in New York, it's not tracking where that jet is in California. There's something that doesn't line up the way radar tracking works, but just that's probably for
and get the one CD wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, then when they arrive in Egypt, I like how this was for me, it was like really cool, how they decided to get into the tomb. They send Kitty down with like scuba gear, basically. She basically goes like deep sea diving, but through solid matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she has a mask on, which I was like, I don't know why she needs the mask other than like, I don't know, curses or some shit.
Okay, I'm gonna clip this part out.
Yep. Curses
or some shit. That should be merch.
I don't know. Like, isn't that the worry every time that somebody opens up a tomb? It's not necessarily that there's a curse there, but there may be like some diseased, gross thing that could like wipe out a half of humanity kind of scenario.
Well, that's what I assumed. I assumed that like once she got into like air, that they didn't know what was going to be in it. It had been sealed for thousands of years, presumably. I do like that they acknowledged a little bit later that it was kind of messed up to send a young girl by herself, or at least Kitty reacted to it. She wasn't just like fearless about it. So
yeah, she was doing the thing where she was like sitting on the ground and like kind of like rocking back and forth by herself.
Yeah, and I think when Nightcrawler got in there, he was like, "Oh, this is bad" or whatever. She's like, "I was down here alone, man." Like, and we don't know for how long. Because they went through, I don't know how Beast knew this, but they went through the instructions of how she could open the door for everybody. Yeah. From the inside.
To be fair, the instructions were, is there a thing that looks like a button?
Yeah.
Yes. Press the thing that looks like a button.
Would have been really morbid is we just hear the radio on Beast's side and it's just her screaming and she's like, it took my hand.
Mm-hmm. And then we see there are, everybody goes down. There are 4 different statues of Egyptian gods. One is Anubis. That's the one that everybody's most familiar with. Horus is the one that looks more like a hawk or an eagle. I think it's Hathor is the one that looks more like a crow with the big long beak on it. And Nehazcan, apologies if I'm saying that wrong, but that's the one that looked like a giant snake.
Oh, gotcha. So, okay.
It was not the thing I hated from Moon Knight, which was the giant crocodile.
the kaiju.
Because it specifically had snake fangs and not the snout of a crocodile.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah. And those said statues start animating. Mm-hmm. And I think we're supposed to get like a mystic kind of vibe from that. Like there was a curse or some shit. Mm-hmm. And then the tomb door closes behind him, and I think it's Scott that yells like, "We're trapped."
To be continued.
Yeah, tense string music, and to be continued.
It definitely follows the pattern that this show has done of their season finales being big, lots of characters, like very set piecey and stuff like that, which leads, like, gives more credence to what we know about Cruise Control being aired out of order.
I'm trying to... Yeah, once we get to Cruise Control, we'll talk about it. But, like, I want to start taking some guesses of where... I know we said where you thought... where it was supposed to be. But like,
it was supposed to be before X-23.
But, like, where it would make more sense, just in general, regardless of intentions and stuff. So it was a weird little episode. Yep. But yeah, no, there's not much to say about this because this is basically a setup for the next episode, which I like both of these, but the next one is like the action-packed one.
To be fair, we've been saying stuff about it for 50 minutes, so right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and to me, like, one of the few times it actually felt like X-Men. Finally,
it felt like a comic book issue.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I got more thoughts, and we'll get into that into the next one. But yeah, it was. It's a solid start to the end of a season, I feel like. So, cool. And then just a quick reminder, we forgot to shout it out at the beginning. If you haven't, make sure you listen to last week's episode, even if you're... Please don't do those out of order, because that's weird. Where we had John Reisinger of Tales from the Stinky Dragon, who was our X-23 expert, which was awesome having him join us. So
yeah, he was hilarious. He was a lot of fun to have on.
I mean, he does do professional yes and for, his career at this point. So yeah. Rod, we found the spot where I messed up on the script, so I'm going to close us out.
Okay.
It's supposed to be you because of our normal order, but I messed it up, so I will handle it. Thank you guys for joining us. If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload, the official Instagram post about this episode, or the Spotify comments section, because that's a thing. And if you like what we heard, we appreciate a rating on the podcast app you're choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, and of course, make us number one on CastBox.
Number one CastBox. Box. Botch.
CastBox?
Yeah.